Welcome to Launch Over 40 with Yolanda Kennedy, and today our guest is Karin Hanna, financial planner and founder of Financially Fabulous, which empowers women to take control of their financial picture today and in the future. Her mission is to educate, support, and empower women about their lives and their money, and to ensure they are effectively strategizing financially in place so they can live happily ever after and accomplish their goals for life today, tomorrow, and in retirement. Hi, Karin.
Hi, Yolanda. How are you?
Oh, fine. I'm really happy that you can join us tonight.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's great.
I know that you're in Australia, so it's actually your morning.
Yes.
So tell me about Financially Fabulous. I mean, I just love that name.
Well, we're a pretty cheeky startup in Australia, obviously based on the Gold Coast. I've just finished my MBA. I'm a licensed financial advisor, and I'm over 40 as well. So, we wanted to bring a women's touch to financial planning and address the issues as to why women won't, it's the final taboo, why we won't talk about money and all that sort of stuff, and probably approach it from a more female perspective of farm and goals, and just tell the stories around why it's important so that we actually do start talking about it and start acting on it.
That makes sense, because I know myself with a person who helped with real estate and mortgages for 13 years. That was one thing that always took me by surprise, how a lot of women was not aware of their financial situation.
Yeah, it seems like we'll talk about every other topic. We'll talk about we've got this job, but we won't talk about our net worth. I think we wrap it up into our self-worth, which is a real mistake, because we've got to see our value anyway and separate it. But, I do think a lot of the fairy tales that from little girls tell us that we need to be a victim and that we need to be rescued. And so I think a lot of them brought that in over the years, even without realising it. So it's there subconsciously and they're living it out. So we need to change that as well and start telling our kids more empowering stories about money and that they can be the heroes of their own stories and that they don't need to be rescued.
I agree. And you did break up a little bit there, Karin. I'm not sure if everybody heard everything you were saying about the need not to be a victim and not to be rescued. Could you repeat yourself?
Yeah, I think, in all the fairy tales, when you have a look at Cinderella, pretty much all of them, women are the role models. We're beautiful. It's all about looks, and it's all about us needing to be rescued. And I think that when we're telling those stories to our children, that's, what we've heard growing up, and somehow, we tend to live that out later on without even realising it.
I agree. I mean, I've actually had women tell me when I called about a question that they don't handle that stuff. They had no idea. They really didn't have any clue in their checking account.
Yeah, it's crazy. And yet money impacts us. We make financial decisions every single day, 10 times a day probably. And, we do know that we've got unique challenges as women. We're living longer. We're taking time out often to have that we're ending up, a lot of us, as bag ladies. And unfortunately, it's not Prada and Louis Vuitton. It's pigeons in the park because of this financial avoidance. So somehow we've got to change it and get us talking about money, get us realising the importance of it and creating an environment where it's safe. So it's not around being judged. It's around applauding women who are going to learn, and take some steps to get it right.
Now
because it's not that complicated. If we can raise children, we can, grow money.
Oh, definitely. So, I mean, with, we're both over 40, and of course, it's Launch Over 40. And what would you say to a woman who is in our age who maybe wasn't that aggressive or proactive about her financial situation in her 20s and her 30s, that she should, 3 steps that she should start doing now to kind of make sure that when she gets a little older, she's not finding herself almost in a poverty level? Because I know I just read a study that said that women are 2 times as likely to retire in poverty than men are.
Yeah, that's huge. You have to pay yourself first. And I think having a business is probably your best bet rather than trading time and money for a job. So I think, congratulations everyone for starting a business, because you've got much more chance of getting ahead financially and playing catch up than than if you were simply, working at a job. But you've got to set financial goals and you've got to start paying yourself first rather than last. So I know a lot of startups, it's like they'll spend all their time and energy on making it look beautiful, but not chasing customers and chasing the business, or not delegating, not having a supportive team, so they won't delegate, and then they end up, really, really, really busy and burnt out. So I think we've got to learn to look after ourselves, recognise that we're business people, and, part of that is that you do, in fact, pay yourself for retirement as well as living costs. And most of us do undervalue ourselves. A lot of female businesses just don't charge anywhere near. And we tend to trade with our friends because we want to be helpful and liked, but we won't take money off them. So I think you've got to get really comfortable asking for the money. And that's just practice and focus.
In order to get comfortable with money. Karin, you were saying in order to get in order to get comfortable with money, we need to do practice. So what type of practice would you recommend? I mean, because I know that with some other clients I had when I was in mortgages and real estate before I started Launch Over 40, it was almost like you was cursing at them when you started talking numbers.
Yeah. And I think it is just finding, get a group of your girlfriends and decide it's important, and just start having, conversations around money, around what can we do, instead of feeling like a victim, and just pull each other up. When you hear someone sounding like a victim, turn the conversation around to, okay, get it, but what could you do? Because I think a lot of times we let our situations be dictated. I mean, there was an example in Stanford University, which I love, and in entrepreneurship class, and they decided that they would break all the students up into teams, and their goal was to make as much money as possible within a 2-week period. They had 2 hours to actually execute the money-making exercise, 2 weeks to think it up, strategise, work out what they were going to do, and they handed them an envelope. And they said, there's your resources. That's what you've got. Once you open the envelope, that's it. You can't spend any more than that. And inside the envelope was $5. So a lot of them went into, oh my God, we've only got $5. How are we going to market anything and make any money? But they persisted because they had 2 weeks. And, one of them went out and bought a bike pump, and they started offering, their 2 hours was at the uni offering to pump up people's tyres, bike tyres for 2 hours. And they found out that, instead of charging people, when they asked for donations, they made a lot more money, and they actually did quite well. I think they got, $500 or something in the 2 hours out of their $5 investment. Wow. Another group, what they did was, the ritziest restaurant in town always had this big lineup out the front, and they had those beepers. And so they had their team go down to the restaurant, and they went down early, obviously, and got the first lot of beepers. So when people were lining up, they would trade beepers and sell them so they didn't have to line up. So that was quite good. They did quite well as well. I think they did better than the bike team. But the team who won kicked goals and never used the $5 at all, because they thought strategically, and they sat down and looked at what did they have as a group, and they never even opened the envelope, I don't think, but they sat there, and so they went, okay, we've got 5 minutes to present this, or 10 minutes in front of the whole Stanford class. That's really valuable, because recruiters and things want to get in front of our grads all the time. What if we sell 5 minutes in front of the grads? So they approached recruiters and, had a commercial filmed, by the recruiters who paid for it, and I think they paid them something like $20,000 for the 5-minute spot.
Wow.
So there are ways when you start brainstorming and saying, well, what if I could, rather than letting yourself say I can't. So it's like, well, if you could do that, what are our resources? And I think for a lot of women, we have so many resources that we don't utilise. Like there's, mothers who've struggled.
She basically is calling us from Australia. So I think we lost our connection. Give us a second. I think that's her. Karin?
Yep.
Yep, we lost you.
Did we drop out?
But we have you back.
Okay.
And you were saying about the mom with autism, how she can create products because she went through that experience?
Yep, and that would be something that would really help another woman who's looking for answers. And, online it's a different world, and that's why I think it's so exciting now, because for women you could do that now. And you can do that usually from home as a startup. But it is, sitting there looking at all your life's experiences and saying, okay, what have I learned? What? And often it's the stuff you struggle with that other people are going to struggle with that they will pay for a solution. So instead of avoiding problems, you've got to, as an entrepreneur, I think, embrace problems and sit, because that's where people will pay. If you can solve their problem, they'll pay you. If you're just a really nice person but you're not solving a problem, it becomes very difficult to get people to want to pay you.
Right. Now, how do you suggest a woman who's in her 40s, maybe never worked for herself, might have worked for someone else, and now because of situations have to get out there and create some income? What steps would you recommend that she takes in order to start deciding how to value herself and how to start pricing? Because that seems to be one of the hardest things for most women. I've had a lot of women approach me in networking and basically treated their business like a hobby and wanted me to do things with them or for them as a favor instead of showing me value and just say, look, I can, help you fix a solution, or I could bring value to you, and this is how I can do it.
Yeah. I think, again, it comes back to making a decision to commit that you're in business to make some money for yourself, for your family, and to change your circumstances. It's not a hobby, because I think when you start off with the hobby mindset, it changes how you set things up. Most of us as women are really, really, really busy, and time is so important to us, especially when we've got to juggle children and school and all those, running around activities for our kids, and we're still cleaning the house and doing the washing and all that sort of stuff as well. So it's making time to be strategic and have a strategy in place and sit there and say, what are the things that will make me money, and do those first. And, bartering can be good sometimes. I'm not saying don't do it, but don't do it if it's not a win-win-win, like a win for you and a win for them. Because I've seen lots of women do exactly what you said, where they're just uncomfortable. And I do think it pays to join, groups like yours and listen and just keep putting positive messages in there and telling yourself you can do it. Because a lot of times if you're in that situation, you don't have the money to hire a professional coach who's going to keep you on target and on track. So you need to find some other entrepreneurial women to connect with, where you're all on a mission, supporting each other and encouraging each other. And that doesn't mean patting each other on the back. And, I go to so many networking events with women, and I find it astounding that what they do is they all try and sell each other instead of recognising, that they don't need to sell their product to each other. What they need to do nowadays is get online, get on Facebook, find these people's Facebooks and connect and start sharing